The Crimson Cliffs, a playground of the winds, and what a holiday spot it is. Arnold and I were in the midst of plans for our next world trip when a good friend stopped in one day to see us. He told us we ought to discover a little adventure in our own country before we tried to make people believe that such exciting travel could be had only in foreign lands. He told us of this southeast corner of the state of Utah, where 4 states come together in a single point, the only place in the world where you can be in 4 states at the same time, or where you can drive through 4 states in something less than 10 seconds flat, where majestic crimson spires, cliffs, and arches have been the pleasure haunts of the winds and the gods for 1,000,000 years, where Indians chant primitive prayers and rites as fascinating as they are strange, and where legends of the past and realities of the present blend in settings of such magnificence as seem almost unbelievable. He was a powerful persuader, this friend of ours. Arnold and I had just finished a trip to the south, maybe you remember, where we hunted the steaming jungles for raw rubber, saw quinine made from the stripped bark of trees, saw loofah and balsa wood and manila hemp wrested from tropic lands, where we found American fellows playing with strange pets they had captured in the jungles, trying to relieve the boredom of lonely outposts up and down the hemisphere. And then we visited a fabulous volcano and spent the night almost under its belching cone, watching the spectacle of its molten eruptions, listening to the deep rumble of its explosions, and sensing beneath our ribs the eerie grip of its fantastic reality and nearness. We told this friend that if his Vermilion playground had anything to offer after what we had just seen, we'd be glad to postpone our foreign trip and go see it. "You'll thank me for it," was all he said, and now we do. We pulled out of Chicago on Route 30 and followed it all the way west to Salt Lake City, then southeast down here to this magenta wonderland. But the area is just as accessible from any other spot in the United States. Route 66 crosses the country here to Arizona, then this highway turns north and delivers you right into the heart of Crimson Corner. The southern route from New Orleans comes through El Paso, and then up. Highways from Kansas reach Colorado and then enter from the east, also from New Mexico. Even people from the west coast find highways just as convenient. All roads lead to this holiday spot in blazing red, where Zeus himself must have vacationed in luxurious leisure 1,000 centuries ago. Monument Valley, the natural bridges, Dead Horse Point, the Arches Monument, the goosenecks of the San Juan, Mexican Hat, and 100 other spots, all rubbing elbows with each other in this fabulous southeast corner of the state of Utah. Our friend was right. No one who can drive a car or who can ride with someone else who does should miss a vacation for himself among the spired cliffs, the canyons, and arches of this eroded garden of the winds. But come along with us now and let Arnold and me take you there first. It won't be as thrilling as when you see it yourself, but it will give you a rough idea. The weeks allotted for our trip to Utah are almost gone, so we finally arrive in the last section which we planned to visit, Monument Valley. It is difficult to describe this valley in words, or even to picture it in such fashion as to do it justice. Since I was a small boy, I've heard of its great rocks, pinnacles, and spires standing alone, scattered about in the red desert, towering nearly 1,000 feet above the valley floor. They bear all kinds of colorful names, and somehow each seems to possess an uncanny fitness. Emperor, the Mittens, Castle Rock, Big Indian Butte, Rooster Rock, Sitting Hen, Brigham's Tomb, Casket Butte, Totem Pole, the Three Sisters, and many, many more. But this is the first time I have ever been here, and now I wonder why I ever stayed away so long. Hollywood came to Monument Valley only a few years ago, and since then, many notable film stories have been photographed on location within its magnificent domain. In fact, we find this movie set still standing, boarded up and alone, out here on the desert. And it is not in the least unusual to arrive at the lodge at night and find famous artists and authors, Hollywood executives, nationally known photographers, and ordinary tourists sitting around the long table chatting over the remains of a delicious meal before going to bed. Monument Valley, one of the truly remarkable spots in all the world for rest, for quiet peace, and for scenic majesty. Monument Valley is a Navajo Indian reservation. We won't argue the theoretical justice or injustice of white man moving in on land occupied by these people years ago, and after finally subduing them, the establishment of a reservation for them on land as harsh and unfriendly to life as this. But it reminds us nevertheless that in 1894, a report was given to a congressional committee stating that this country is desolate desert, inhabited only by Mormons and roving outlaws, unfit for anyone except Indians. As we discuss today the basic freedoms, equity for all peoples in the world, and just compensation for lands taken from them, we might well remember these citizens of Monument Valley. Their goats on sandy dunes or bare rock, their mud hogans, their weaving, their meager store of corn bread, and the friendliness of their smiles as they meet tourists whom they know are friends. We grow to like this fellow very much during our short stay here. He invites us to go along with him and his friends today as they prepare for a healing ceremony to be conducted for a little boy stricken with tuberculosis. This part of the preparation is, in reality, a simple sweat bath. But the way these strange people of the desert do it, it becomes far from simple, at least for a white man. As you've seen while I've been talking, a fire is built in front of this tiny hogan far out in the valley. Rocks have been put into the fire and heated to high intensity, then placed inside the airtight hogan. Now the men undress, drink heavily of water, and then crawl inside to sit on clean, fresh cedar bark and in pitch darkness around the hot rocks in a sweat ceremonial that would prostrate an ordinary white man. For 35 minutes by my watch, they have stayed inside without a breath of oxygen entering the hogan. I had begun to wonder how long they could stay alive. All this time they have chanted prayers constantly. Their chant is difficult to describe, mostly variations on one note, rising and falling and continuing monotonously on and on. Now, as you see, they come crawling out, perspiration running in small rivers down their bodies. The old man is 83 years old, yet he seems as able to take the ordeal as do the younger men. They have brought no towels. They didn't forget them. Instead, they just don't need them. To the Navajo, nothing is cleaner than the pure salmon sand which is blown through the air and brilliant sunlight by his desert wind. So clean sand is as suitable to dry himself with as the finest towel in the shiningest bathroom in the land. And these men revel in that sand like small boys on a beach. When the sand dries, they will simply brush it from their bodies, and they'll be as faultlessly clean as anyone could ask. I'm amazed at how meticulous they are, not at all as I had been led to believe. Leisurely now they dress themselves. Then, completely oblivious to me and my camera, they mount their horses and ride away to further prepare themselves in mind and spirit for the healing ceremony tomorrow. This morning, in a specially prepared hogan, the healing ceremony begins. First, with great humility and devotion, a painting is to be prepared of colored sands as an offering to the great God of the Navajo. The medicine man explains that God is bound to be pleased when so much effort is expended to make a beautiful picture for him. And when pleased, he will surely hear and answer the prayer of the humble Indian. With sand obtained by pulverizing different colored rocks gathered from the cliffs and the desert, these men of the wind and the sun proceed with their painting, weaving their strange medicine as they work. A painting in which every part is symbolical, like the figure of the man laid with corn pollen across the round face of the sun which this painting represents. Then the little boy is brought out, undressed, rubbed with a strange potion, the contents of which are known only to the Navajo. Then he is seated upon the beautiful painting, and the ceremony proper begins. I try to find out the words of the prayers which the men are chanting, but I'm unsuccessful. To Arnold and me, it sounds exactly the same as we heard yesterday, while the men were inside the sweat hogan. The rhythmic chant rising and falling, going on and on, variations on the same tone or note, monotonously repeated over and over until we actually lose track of time. I watch the medicine man as he works and sense the meticulous care with which he performs each step of the rite. Vigilant care, not to offend, but rather to please and win his God. Bizarre and fascinating as it is, I can't free myself from the forceful grip and feeling of the primitive simplicity of the whole thing. If God hears the prayers of Christians, he must also hear the prayers of a people so intense as these. And now the ceremony is over. The little boy is lifted from the painting and brushed clean with sacred prayer feathers. Then he is dressed, and the day is done, and the Navajos go back to their mud hogans among the great spires and cliffs of Monument Valley. Back to their horses, back to their goats, back to their weaving, their cornbread, and the loneliness of their existence. Back to await the miracle of the healing which their God must surely send. They're a simple people, yet somehow proud and free in the majesty of their surroundings. And Arnold and I head back to Chicago, but we've left something behind us, a nostalgic something which will surely someday draw us back once again to Utah's land of the Crimson Cliffs.